Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Redolessence. Welcome back to another video. So we have a brand new drop by the company Dua Fragrances. This fragrance is called A Powdery Affair. You can already pretty much tell what it's going to smell like just based off of the name alone, but if you would like to hear my detailed thoughts on it, make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin this fragrance review and I tell you all about A Powdery Affair by Dua Fragrances, which is one of their most recent fragrances, it actually just dropped on the website. I do want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, if you like perfume reviews, top 10 videos, giveaways, unboxings, and more, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. And also, if you can take a second right now to give this video a thumbs up, it would really mean a lot to me. So, of course, the company Dua makes inspired expressions or clones. They also have original creations. That's exactly what this one is, with a really beautiful presentation. I'm going to show you a close-up in a second. And then they also have like hybrids and tribrids where they combine established niche or designer fragrances to kind of create a novel olfactory experience. In the case of this fragrance, I read the name and I said, uh-oh, this is going to be a powder bomb. So I was pretty much expecting this to smell like baby powder, which it kind of does. But when I looked at the note breakdown, so there's actually rose, jasmine, ylang ylang, tonka bean, heliotrope. It's actually a far more complex note breakdown than I initially suspected. And so I'm really excited to tell you which of those notes really stand out in my opinion, how strong that powdery quality is, does it affect the wearability of the fragrance in terms of making it lean more masculine or feminine, and also what is the performance of this fragrance. I know the concentration is Extrait de Parfum, but in any case, I'm excited to give you my thoughts on the smell. Let's start things off with the presentation. Right in the opening of this fragrance, it's a powder bomb. So kind of like Victor and Rolf has Spice Bomb, you could have called this powder bomb and you would have gotten away with it. So it does smell very much so like baby powder. And I mean, I can say that it's sentimental or poignant for me in any way, even though I have a daughter, a very young daughter. We never actually used baby powder on her. And so I didn't make that connection, although of course I've used baby powder in the past and I know very well what it smells like. But in the case of this fragrance, it does open up very powdery. And one thing that I've come to notice over the past few years of smelling many fragrances is that a lot of floral ingredients, especially when they come across smelling really natural and organic, especially like a lot of these starchy white florals. I'm thinking of like iris and tuberose and even jasmine to a certain extent, although I wouldn't use starchy as an adjective to describe it. Some of these white floral ingredients can actually give off a powdery vibe. And heliotrope does that to a certain extent as well, while also giving the fragrance a nuance of almond. Now, in the case of this fragrance, we have a few different floral ingredients. So you have the rose, you have the jasmine, you have the ylang ylang, and then you also have the heliotrope. Of all of those ingredients, I would say the strongest one is probably the rose, but it's a very smooth, soft, and kind of billowy rose. And it's kind of like buoyant on this cloudy texture that is conveyed by the perfume. And a lot of it has to do with that powdery nuance that I think is a combination of different ingredients in here. So the rose is definitely up top, and I smell it right away and I know that it's rose, but then there's also like this clean undercurrent and there's this musky vibe. So a lot of musk ingredients in perfume also smell rather powdery to me. And if you've smelled some very clean musky fragrances, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. So I get a little bit of that going on in here as well. I get like this synthetic musk vibe, but there's a touch of tonka bean in the base that kind of warms things up. And I do think that it increases the versatility somewhat. Now, the fragrance is the most powdery. It really is at its peak in like the first 20 minutes. So once you give it a chance to dry down, I think some of the warmer elements of the fragrance come through. So like the almondy facet of the heliotrope or like the sweetness of the tonka bean, which also creates a rather smooth texture in the base of this fragrance. The powdery nature never fully goes away. the fragrance is very aptly named because that's what you're going to get throughout the entire life of the fragrance, but it just becomes a little bit more subdued after about the first half hour, or something like that. And it's not until you reach the very base of the fragrance when you actually start to pick up on like the sweeter nuances and some of those other smoother musk components that might not necessarily come across powdery per se, but they do smell clean. And so in the opening, one might get the impression that this is a feminine fragrance just because of its powdery nature. But if you are a fan of floral fragrances, there really is something to be enjoyed with this one. Now, I think this is marketed for women. And the reason I say that is because the package contains a hair mist. And so I don't know of too many men's products that have a hair mist attached to them. So I think this is marketed for women. But if you are a fan of floral ingredients in fragrances, especially ylang ylang, rose, jasmine, there's nothing indolic about this one. Whenever you add indole to a fragrance, which is a naturally occurring compound in jasmine, especially sambac jasmine, you get a lot of indole. You are going to get like this barnyard quality about it. There is zero of that happening in here. So I'm getting the jasminol, but I'm not getting the indole. And so I think that that would have created a quirky contrast, thus separating it from that clean vibe that I think this fragrance was intending to convey. So you get that clean vibe. There are no rough edges. There are some powdery edges, but no rough edges. And even smelling it right now, I can still get that loud burst of powder. If you're a fan of fragrances like, you know, some of the more classic women's fragrances, especially some that are like really, really long lasting, you're gonna get a slightly more contemporary version with this one. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't smell like a Chanel No. 5 or something like that. It's not that antiquated, and I'm really using that word not as a pejorative, but as in a more literal sense. You know, that fragrance is almost 100 years old now that you think about it. So in the case of this fragrance, you kind of get like that old school, classy, retro Art Deco 1920s vibe from it. But there are some elements in here that are a bit more contemporary, which I really enjoy and I appreciate. I think this is a very unique composition, and I'm so happy to have this one in my collection. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. So first, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I really haven't smelled a fragrance that smells quite like this one does, although I've encountered a lot of powdery fragrances, yes. I know Burberry Touch has a reputation for being a powdery fragrance. To a certain extent, Midnight in Paris by Van Cleef & Arpels, and then there's also La Nuit de l'Homme by Yves Saint Laurent. A lot of people say the cardamom kind of makes that fragrance smell a little bit powdery too. I'm not necessarily getting that from this fragrance. This one is a little bit more on the floral side, thus leaning a little bit more feminine, but I actually do like the overall smell. I think it conveys a really nice personality about it. The longevity on this one is about 8 to 10 hours on your skin. This is extrait de parfum, so it does last for a very long time. The projection is monstrous for the first 2 hours of application, especially given the fact that for some reason with powdery fragrances, they really seem to get you noticed. And so when you wear this one, I think it will convey this sense of being clean, and it kind of also has like this fabric softener, like freshly laundered clothing vibe. And so you're just gonna smell clean and floral when you wear this one. In terms of the versatility, I think this one is about 75% feminine, 25% masculine, but of course that's given the fact that this one is, I think, marketed for women with the hair mist and the body cream and stuff like that, which is a really cool concept, and I'm glad that Dua is delving into that territory. I can see this one being enjoyed when the weather is a little bit hot, but I can also see somebody pulling this one off in the colder weather too, because of its tenacity and how long the fragrance lasts and how loudly it performs. And then I think that this one gives off a casual vibe, but I can also see this one working really well in a formal scenario too. So it's a fairly versatile fragrance. In terms of the presentation, they really stepped their game up. My final verdict on this fragrance is, if you are looking for like the holy grail powdery fragrance, this is it. If powder is the name of the game, you are looking for the most powdery fragrance that you can get your nose on, please check out A Powdery Affair by Dua Fragrances. All the links are going to be down below. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate your viewership. It means a lot to me. If you did take something of value from this fragrance review of A Powdery Affair by Dua, please do show your support by subscribing to this channel. And also while you're at it, if you can take a second to give this video a thumbs up, it would really mean a lot to me. Thanks again for watching. Love you all. We'll see you soon. Bye.